Hello, my name is Joseph Longo, and this is my final video project for the History of the Prison course. Specifically, the era that I will be discussing is the 15th century to modern day. There's an abundance of material to choose from, but for me, one clear historical marker remains imperative to understanding modern day prison concerns. Inquisition prisons are an important and key precedent to the modern day penitentiary, specifically influencing mass incarceration. Inquisition prisons were a unique component to monastic forms of punishment. Notably, Inquisition prisons stood out for one specific purpose: to round up heretics by religious leaders. One of the most famous examples is the Spanish Inquisition by the Roman Catholic Church in the 15th century. A defining characteristic of Inquisition imprisonment was the mass rounding up of heretics. Little discretion was made as religious leaders subjectively and recklessly rounded up civilians. This persecution was so subjective that neighbors would accuse those that wronged them of being heretics. All of this resulted in a mass rounding up of people with little discretion. Eventually, all the monasteries and churches were filled. This resulted in a defining moment: the building of standalone structures for the sole purpose of housing heretics. While the Inquisition prison did not lead directly to the modern-day penitentiary, we see notable remnants, such as the surge in purpose-built punishment structures. According to the Congressional Research Service, the number of state and federal adult correctional facilities rose from 1,277 in 1990 to 1,821 in 2005. This is a whopping 43% increase. As New Jersey Senator Cory Booker noted, this averages out to a new prison being built roughly every 10 days for this 15-year span. Inquisition prisons are not the only example of standalone structures throughout the history of the prison. But like today's prisons, they were one of the first to set a precedent of building structures in mass waves for the sole purpose of housing criminals. No longer sectors of current monasteries, they were singular intent buildings. For there to be an abundance of purpose-built structures, a mass roundup of people was needed, and both Inquisition prisons and today's penitentiaries targeted specific groups. Norman Johnson reports in his book, Forms of Constraint, the estimated number of heretics part of the Inquisition, that between 1705 and 1808, 291,450 people were captive. During the 14th and 15th centuries, the Catholic Church targeted those who would not convert to their religion. Often these were Jews and Muslims. Because Catholics controlled much of Europe at the time, they locked up their enemies who threatened their control and power. Today, similarities are noted in the targeting of black bodies. According to the NAACP, of the 2.3 million people in prison in 2008, nearly 1 million were African Americans. Inquisition prisons and today's incarceration share a mutual interest in locking up specific populations. One notable reason was the subjective and economic impact of incarceration. Inquisition imprisonment had several different levels of severity, ranging from fasting to being chained to a wall. However, those with status and wealth had an easier time. Sentences could be commuted for monetary payment, and the select few could bribe jailers for food and clothes. Similarly, million-dollar blocks demonstrate the price of incarceration comes from specific communities filled with predominantly black residents with lower socioeconomic levels. Like the poor during the Inquisition, low-income black populations do not have the prominence to obtain powerful legal representation or pay exorbitant fines. The last similarity between the two areas of punishment is a shared response to crime, a vocalized rehabilitation that is in fact a revenge. On the surface, the Inquisition was a chance for religious leaders to reform civilians' beliefs and lead them to rejoin or become Christians. What actually occurred was far different. Inquisition was a rounding up of the other. Non-Christians were being condemned not for their actions, but to get back at them for their belief systems. Today, the high incarceration rate is often touted as reforming criminals and synonymous with a low crime rate. However, the two are not connected. If anything, it is a potential increase in crime resulting from imprisonment. In Illinois, more than 50% of prisoners return to prison within 3 years. Moreover, blacks living in million-dollar blocks and ghettos are being punished for their circumstances and not fitting white standards. Inquisition prisons were an important step to the modern-day penitentiary system. It was an inquisition of black bodies for not living up to white standards.
Created using Powtoon.